If you like our content, please like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get alerts when we introduce new videos.
Welcome to the demonstration series for the Ruckus Smart Zone controller based on a high-scale deployment of the version 5.2 release. The videos in this series will show you the basic configuration of many aspects of the controller. In this video, I'll describe how to upgrade the firmware on ICX switches from the Smart Zone controller. So let's get started. As you can see, I'm already logged in to a high-scale instance of the virtual Smart Zone controller. You can also see that it's running version 5.2. Now before I go through the firmware upgrade process, let's look at the current firmware version running on my demo switch. So switches are managed from the Switches tab on the left side pane of the Smart Zone dashboard. First, I'll select the switch from the list of managed switches. Once selected, view the General tab. In this area, you can see that this switch is running version 8.0.92 firmware. Now in order to download newer firmware, you have to browse to support.ruckuswireless.com. After you've logged in, you need to scroll down to the Ruckus ICX switches. In the page that loads, I'll select the ICX71 switches, since that's the type I'm running. On this page, I'll select the Downloads tab and scroll down to the desired firmware. We want the 8.0.92b release, so I'll click on that. Then click the Download Software button. Of course, I have to accept the license agreement, then I can click Download to save the firmware zip file to my computer. As you can see, I already have this release, but for demonstration purposes, I wanted to show you the whole process. So I'm going to cancel the download. Next, we move back to the Smart Zone web interface. The first thing we need to do here is to upload the firmware to the controller. We do this by selecting Administration on the left side pane of the interface, then select Upgrade, and then select the Switch Firmware tab. In this tab, you can see any firmwares that have already been uploaded to the controller. Here I have version 8.0.92. To upload the 8.0.92b firmware, I need to click the Browse button, locate the firmware zip file, and click Open. After this, you can click the Upload button. The upload process will take a few moments, and when complete, will display the new firmware along with any previous firmware versions in the Uploaded Switch Firmware section. As you can see, we now have two firmware versions. In order to upgrade the firmware, we need to navigate back to Switches on the left-hand pane, then select our switch. Once selected, the More button becomes available. Click on that, then select Schedule Firmware. In the pop-up that displays, you simply select the desired firmware version from the drop-down. Then you have the option to load switch or router firmware. We want router. Then you can decide to apply the firmware now or at a later scheduled time. Selecting later opens a calendar where you can select the date and time to perform the firmware upgrade. For example, June 14th at 1 minute after midnight. But for our purposes, I'm going to select now. Once I click OK, a message is displayed indicating that the upgrade request was successfully submitted to the task manager on the controller. Now we'll jump over to the switch console. Well, you cannot see it, the firmware is pushed to the switch, verified, and then the switch is rebooted. Depending on network bandwidth and throughput, the entire process could take approximately 10 to 15 minutes. Here we see the switch is rebooted. I'll log in and run the show version command, and you can see it's now running version 8.0.92b. If I return to the Smart Zone web interface again and refresh the view of the switch, it will also reflect the updated version of the firmware. So this concludes a demonstration describing how to upgrade the firmware on ICX switches from the Smart Zone high-scale controller running release 5.2. Thanks for taking the time to view this demonstration.